The human brain and nervous system have to be understood in their largest context. We think of the brain as being this gray matter that's contained inside of our skull, the intracranial brain, which is comprised of about 10 to 12 billion neurons. These are specific nerve cells or brain cells that are specifically tasked with conceiving, constructing, transmitting information to the body. But our brain doesn't stop in our cranium. Via our spinal cord and the branches that go out, which we refer to as the central nervous system, the larger brain, central nervous system, is comprised of about 100 billion neurons or cells. And these govern, in turn, about 70 trillion cells that make up our body in total. In order for our body to follow its prime directive, which is simply to become whatever our consciousness is, there's a pathway. The pathway is called Psychoneurophysiological. Psycho means mind, neuro means brain or central nervous system, and physiological means the integrated functioning of the human anatomy. Our mind conceives, constructs, and governs the brain chemistry. And so brain matter doesn't just transmit information. It itself has several secretion sites that secrete neuropeptides, neurotransmitters. These are protein-like substances that transmit to the body how the body is to govern itself in terms of its material and structural relationships, how the body is to behave in order to conform to what the mind is experiencing. So if you have a sad thought, then within seconds, the brain will have produced the kinds of neurotransmitters that tell the body to move into sad mode. And there are measurable quantities of sadness-related chemicals that will then begin to inform all body function that we're sad now. Likewise, if you change your mind, maybe the information base of the world around you has changed, and you experience instead of that fear, then the mind tells the brain to change its chemistry, and neurotransmitters of fear or perhaps flight, meaning run away or fight, begin to go into biochemicals that then fill the container of the body with fear molecules, and the body utterly changes its entire material and structural relationship, and its agenda has changed utterly. Likewise, if we have anger, then the angry molecules that are produced by the brain inform the body now to become the body of anger, and to identify whatever the other is. Other means something that's non-self, that might be threatening one's existence. And the body's entire agenda will go through a change. So like that, psychoneurophysiology, from the mind to the brain to the body turns out to be a printout of whatever our consciousness has decided it's experiencing. Whatever our consciousness has decided is its relationship with the world around us. Now let's examine for a moment, using this model, what happens when our consciousness experiences something outside the range of all of these relativities. I ate a beautiful little cake and that made me happy, so I'm happy. Mind says that, brain converts it into neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters inform the body to go into happy mode, and body's all happy. Then I learned that I'm a diabetic and I overdid it and I forgot my insulin. So now I move from being a happy cake eater to being a frightened cake eater. What's going to happen to me? Mind immediately begins to tell the brain to release neurotransmitters that cause me to be frightened. I get an overload of experience by being so frightened. Or perhaps another event occurs and I become angry. Or perhaps another episode in life presents itself and I become deeply saddened. Instead of all of this, we have these relativities are all based on things that we perceive happening either in the outside world or indeed in our own body, which is also, when you consider it, part of the outside world. Is the interface between our consciousness and the outside world is our body. There we are now sitting in a chair. We've learned Vedic meditation. We begin using our mantra, our specialized sound for practicing Vedic meditation effortlessly. The mind is beginning to let go of its attachment to this is not done, that's not done, I have to do this, I have to do that, and so on. All of these relativities as increasingly abstract layers of thought present irresistible charm to the mind and draw the mind away from the outside relative world. As the mantra becomes fainter and fainter, the mind touches on a state where mantra disappears, thoughts disappear, and the mind ends up being in a state of pure, silent consciousness. That pure, silent consciousness, known as being, is described in ancient Vedic literature as ananda, which means bliss, provided that we define bliss as non-ecstatic. It's not ecstasy, it's supreme inner contentedness. When the mind experiences that, this also has to be transmitted by the brain to the body. Mind conceives, constructs, governs, and becomes whatever our body is. And so as our mind experiences being, it's a conception or an experience that's been had, and then it begins to construct through the help of the brain and the central nervous system all of those neurotransmitters that will then inform the body that we now have to become the body of bliss. It's the prime directive of the body simply to take its cue from the neurotransmitters produced by the brain, by the central nervous system. What shall I now become? And a transition into a bliss state is a transition into a state where you needn't fight or flee. You needn't be angry about anything. There's nothing to be sad about. The mind is experiencing a baseline of pure inner contentedness. So what happens? Neurotransmitters of bliss begin to appear. Bliss chemistry is a cocktail of a variety of chemicals that our brain knows how to produce and for which there are receptors in all of the cells of the body to turn the body into the body of that supreme contentedness. And what is the basis of the contentedness? It's not just a blind contentedness or premature contentment. It's not complacency. It's a contentedness based on a sense of having infinite capability. Infinite capability. So I have infinite capability and I'm at peace because I know that if a demand comes my way, I can meet that demand successfully with an abundance of energy, creative intelligence, and staying power, and have a successful interaction with the world. And so that contentedness is a kind of bring it on mentality. One is really content because one can sense infinite capability is at one's disposal. So this is all mediated by psychoneurophysiology, mind, brain, body. Just as every experience had by a human is mediated through that chain of phenomena, that chain of psychoneurophysiology. Likewise, the bliss that's produced by Vedic meditation creates the body of bliss. And the body of bliss is not the ecstatic body. The body of bliss is the contented body. In one of the ancient documents of India entitled the Upanishads, there's a beautiful analogy. And that is of the archer who has an arrow knocked onto a bowstring. If the arrow is pulled back only a slight amount, then released, the arrow will just describe a curve straight into the ground. If the arrow is pulled all the way back to its full draw, now the arrow is backed up by a huge amount of potential energy. It is silent, but it's a dynamic silence. If released, the arrow will fly with a straight trajectory right toward whatever target it's been pointed at. So like that, the mind in meditation is drawn back into that field of infinite potentiality, and it is ready now to meet demands successfully. The mind is not going to have to hypnotize itself that, I'm ready for anything. You can feel it as you meditate and stresses are released and eliminated in the physiology. Then your potentials, your energy, your creative intelligence are liberated, and they are looking for opportunities to meet demands successfully. So when you come out of meditation, although you're peaceful like an arrow on a fully drawn bowstring. When it's time to engage, you can engage with enormous confidence, because there is no demand to which a human being using their full potential, there's no demand to which such a human being cannot interact, with which a human being cannot interact absolutely successfully. And this is the great potential brought from the potential into the kinetic by Vedic meditation.